whatever you'd like to talk about.
Thank you very much, Dan. So what I want to talk about first of all is the situation at the moment. So just completed a Universal Soul Retrieval training here in the Octagon this afternoon. It's been a very full-on session. 3 people have trained, and it is without doubt the most energetically demanding thing that I ever do in my life. And I've done a few, so it certainly ranks pretty high up there. And what I find that what is required to do this is first of all to be the host of the space, to maintain and hold the space during the entire event, to be present listening to each person when they're revealing their reports, which are utterly fascinating. There's no question about it, although this may be the most demanding thing I do, it is also undoubtedly the most satisfying thing I do. Because to watch people go from a perspective of, I wonder what's going to happen here, to actually learning the modalities, receiving the modalities, and then creating their own, often more powerful, quicker, more efficient, more effective modalities. That is just fantastic as far as I'm concerned, so I absolutely love it. The other thing that's interesting is that this evening is going to be a plant spirit medicine retreat. So one event finishes Sunday afternoon, the other event begins Sunday evening. That's the first for me. Very much looking forward to it, and 2 of the participants from the UGR, from the USR training, graduates I need to call them now, seeing as they've actually completed, are actually going to be partaking of the plant medicine tonight. So what I want to do now, Dan, is to do the opposite, because I'd be really interested for you to share with the people here exactly what it was like for you, because you're the first person in the world to receive the USR, and therefore it would be very interesting for people here, I think, to hear what it was like for you. Dan, I would like to ask you this question, because we have some of the graduates from the USI training here this evening, and I thought it might be interesting for them to hear a little bit about your story, as you are the very first person in the world to receive the USR. So you've got it in its raw, unembellished form. It'd be interesting for people to hear what your experience was.
Well, it was a sheer experience, I suppose you'd call it, in those days. With it being the very first USR, I don't think, I hesitate to say either of us didn't know what we were doing, but we were certainly in uncharted territory. The experience was, because I can feel certain things on certain levels, certain energies, I could feel energy being manipulated on different levels. It felt as though literally tubes were being attached to certain areas, filtering different parts of the body, and I later found out that was the universal cleanse, and different things were added to the to my aura's protection, and those things were developed later on. But overall, my initial experience was I was bowled over by the whole thing. I was out of action for about a week, and I don't know what it was. I seemed to be, I hesitate against saying my own world, but it was like my head was in a fog, and I became very sensitive to violence, loud noises, you know, abuse, negative energies, to the point where I couldn't watch TV, and that kind of thing. It really did hit me hard, and it was at least a week before I kind of felt like myself again, and it kind of came on gradually as the time went on. I felt myself becoming more at peace with myself, and then shortly afterwards I felt as though a karmic shift had happened, whereas before I felt like the world was letting me do whatever I chose to do on my own karmic energy. I felt like the world was actually diverting me away from things that were going to cause me pain and harm. You know, they call it synchronicity, but in this case it was kind of out of sync, so that I didn't go into harm, and I led the good path. So it was many things coming together at the same time in that period of my life, and it was a very powerful experience.
Thank you very much. And so, with hindsight, what would you say have been the particular benefits to your life since you've had the USR?
Well, the whole point about the USR is that all energies from all lifetimes, from all instances that have been trapped, and either serving you a purpose or released and brought back to the whole to serve your purpose. So I suppose at a certain level there is a kind of a calmness that perhaps I wasn't facing particularly before. On a different level I was being under the influence of a negative energy, and removing that old spirit life force increased not only my vitality but also my outlook, and I realised I wasn't a grumpy old man anymore, and I could let things go and I could let things happen. So different weights being lifted off different parts of myself in different realms, it's sometimes subtle, sometimes more obvious, but unlike probably every other course that I've had, the end result did linger over months, noticeably so. You know, I expect these things to wear off after a week, and it didn't. So, but as I say, at that time there was no safeguards on this thing. There were no buffers to hold the power back, and wham, I was knocked out. Since then the whole thing's changed and it's become a lot more subtle, and people now complain. Before they complained that it was hitting them too hard and they couldn't work and they couldn't drive, and now they're saying I don't feel it. So, you know, it's certainly matured since the first time.
Thanks. And is there anything else you'd like to add that you haven't so far mentioned?
It's interesting that people are now being trained into this, so that there are universally more practitioners practicing this, which is unique in the world as far as I'm concerned. So it's a privilege to be involved with that, and I wish it all the best.
Thank you very much, Dan.